As entrepreneurs, there's a reason why we decided to leave our 9 to 5 for an 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. I'm here to tell the stories of why we all hustle and grind for our companies. On today's podcast, I'm speaking with Grace Clemens. So, Grace, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate it. You've got some really cool stuff that you've done, and I'm really, really looking forward to having a good chat with you today. So, again, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Cool. So I like to always start the conversation with a little bit about what your ninja skill is. Like, what is that one thing that you're really good with? I know we hear marketing, we hear things like that, but what specifically are you good at?
Ooh, there's a couple things. I mean, strategy is my number one thing. I think the skill within that would be finding the opportunities, finding improvements. That's really my specialty.
Okay.
And communications is something that I've always been extremely good at. It's always been involved with every role I've had, and it's something that comes naturally to me. So I would say strategy and communications.
And when you say strategy, I know that's one thing that we always think about is in marketing. And I know I've seen friends have trouble with it. I've had trouble with it where we talk about a whole lot of tactics, but not a whole lot of strategy. It's sort of, well, I've got my Instagram guy, I've got my YouTube guy, I've got my blogs guy, I've got my Instagram, LinkedIn guy or girl. Talk to me a little bit more about why strategy is an important part and what do you do as far as strategy is concerned to make it easier? I think, a lot of times we're piecemeal. How does your strategy help make things a little bit more coordinated?
Yeah, I mean, the strategy is always multi-channel. So I'm looking at how can we make everything come together as a whole. And then when you're looking at each platform on its own, standing on its own strategy. So you have your umbrella strategy, which includes your email, your website, your SMS, and your social media. And then you have the strategy for Instagram, the strategy for LinkedIn, the strategy for Pinterest, whatever you have. Um, so the idea is really making sure that the digital footprint is across the board and works. But what is the purpose of the strategy? Why do we do it? Especially in today's day and age, it is so fast moving. There's so much to keep up with. Everything's changing fast. The strategy gives you room to be creative, to make mistakes, fix those mistakes, and respond in real time as well. Like that's where the fun stuff happens. I know from my content as an example, I have a specific strategy where I have a specific video that goes out once a week, every day. And it has made my life so much easier the past year to be able to sit down and write fun, creative, valuable posts that my audience actually enjoys. And this goes same for brands as well.
Mhm. I think we've come into the age, and I'm not going to judge on it, but we've come to the age where there's this chat GPT and you use a lot of that for copywriting, things like that. And I don't know if I don't, you may, you'll know more about this than I do, but I don't think it's engaging. I don't think I mean, it does a decent job, but I think we don't get that engagement. Like there needs to be, as entrepreneurs, we're stuck in our lane. We're very good at what we do, but we don't often think about engaging an audience and how to do that because we're passionate. We expect other people to be passionate, right? So talk to me a little bit about that. Like, how do you engage? What sorts of things do you do to engage audience? And what are some blind spots that you've seen entrepreneurs have with this specific topic that they might be, that you can shine some light on and help them to understand, oh, this is a problem. Here's the solution for it.
So there's two questions in one there. What was the first one? So I can
Oh,
do
it's
one
okay.
of
It's all right. My questions start to go from here and they kind of expand a little bit. It's all good. So let's take a look at an entrepreneur who we're really passionate about what we do. I'm passionate about keynotes. You're passionate about marketing. Sometimes we get blinders on where we think we're going in one direction. Or sorry, we're going in one direction that we're really passionate about. We think everyone else is really passionate about that one thing that we do, and it doesn't always resonate. I've seen this happen sometimes in marketing. How would you talk to an entrepreneur who doesn't feel like they're connecting with their audience? What are some blind spots that you've seen when we get hyper focused on this one, our passion, without actually like connecting with our audience? Hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. Yeah.
Yes, and in relation to AI as well. I think the number one thing that comes to mind is the biggest phrase on TikTok right now, which is AI can't do that. There's
Mhm.
good videos out there where we're like, AI simply couldn't recreate this. It couldn't. And I think the same goes for copy as well. So, I mean, general rule of thumb, you should never be asking AI to create your copy from scratch or create
Mm.
your ideas from scratch. You should be feeding it in and asking it to go from there.
Okay.
None of my creative copy ever comes from AI from scratch. So, how to make sure it resonates with your audience? This is why you should be doing monthly audits to
Okay.
be looking at what already resonates with your audience. If you
Okay.
don't have any data existing, survey your audience, survey them, ask them, what do they like? And then obviously you have to test it. So looking at what your audience's likes are, what their dislikes are, putting yourself into their shoes, using their kind of terminology, also reading the room, understanding where they're at emotionally when you are putting that message out there. That's probably going to be the biggest thing to help sure it resonates is you might have a great message for your audience, but if they're not in the right frame of mind to receive that message, it could all go down the drain. So making sure that you are reading the room, being aware of what's going on emotionally with your customer and where they're at in the customer journey as well.
Mm.
And the data never lies. So if you're wondering what your customer likes, go look at what they've engaged with online and then you will know for sure.
Okay. Have heard that marketing is a little bit science. It's half science, half art, half luck. I don't know if you
I
found the
love
same thing
that
as well.
actually. I'm gonna keep that.
Help yourself, absolutely. So now let's pivot for just a second because I always love the backstory. My favorite question is, and I'm going to pose this question to you. Tell me about the sequence of events that got you into marketing.
Yeah, so I always joke that marketing chose me. But I started 13, almost 14 years ago, right out of uni. I studied digital marketing, and had I not dropped out of uni, I had to drop out for personal reasons for a couple years. Had I not dropped out, digital marketing wouldn't have been an option to study at my university. Those classes were just coming into play and being introduced. So I always think that the timing of when I went back to university really was, special, I guess. So did my thesis in social media and consumer psychology, went right into B2B marketing. I lived in London for about 10 years. And I worked for a small mobile marketing agency based in London called Hi Mom Said Dad, and they were working with large FMCG brands. So Domino's, Carlsberg, Royal Caribbean, Oxfam, you name it. So I came on board and helped them build their entire social media strategy from the ground up. This was before paid ads on Facebook even existed. So having to prove my value to the CEO was really an important part of my job. And that's the first time I really started doing audits because I had to prove the value of my work. I was there for about 3 years, did some great work, had a great time with the company, and built up their entire strategy with blog and all that good stuff. And they're still to this day using social media, and it always makes me smile to see how far they've come. And then during that time, I did a little bit of consultancy on the side for some smaller, like music brands and swimming companies, travel brands. Then I was doing as when I was a student ambassador, I was blogging, and my goal was to use that blog to get into fashion for marketing, which I did. I left Hi Mom Said Dad and I went into Silk Fred. I saw 5 times growth within those 4 years while I was at that company, and I wore every single hat that there was to wear at one point in time on the marketing team. We did some incredible work, and from email marketing, I doubled sales the first mill for the first year from 1 million to 2 million, and we doubled subscribers. We 5 times the monthly revenue from 120,000 to 4 mil. I mean, there's just a ton of stuff that we did there during that time, but it was an extreme time of growth and it was very customer focused, and we did a lot of really fun new modern day marketing stuff like going live, Black Friday. That was our thing. So I had a lot of fun there and I learned a lot and made a lot of difference there as well. And then after 4 years, I chose to go freelance in 2020, and I was picked up by Green Rock Agency in London, and that is who hired me to focus on X Prize. And that is where I came on board to oversee the 100 million X Prize carbon removal, which was sponsored by Elon Musk.
Mhm.
So I came on board and did a total digital marketing audit over all channels, communications, and email as well. And we saw, up across the board, 870% from Twitter alone. And I'm going to highlight that one because they had stopped using that channel until I came back on board.
Mm.
And I had an inkling that it was going to be where their audience was, but when I did the audit, I could say I've got the proof to back my hypotheses. We saw an 870% increase. Fast forward, that was the only channel that we were able to communicate with Elon Musk on when he donated the money. So that 870% became infinite. Um, since X Prize, I've done digital marketing audits for e-commerce brands, some marketing strategies. I've also done a lot of content marketing strategies and consultancy, helping people figure out what the purpose is and of their business online and how they're going to, translate that into content.
Mm.
And what else? What else? A little bit of hospitality, a little bit of nonprofits. I've really done it kind of all. And now I'm focusing on digital marketing audits, which focuses on how you can improve your ROI and your strategy going forward. Now, in the findings of that report, you as the brand have a choice to implement in-house, or you can
Okay.
implement with my agency, SGC Marketing, where I have a
Mm.
ton of freelancers that are handpicked to your strategy.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of, and again, you would know more about this than I do, but one of the things I learned about marketing is there's one person that's really good at Facebook, Instagram. There's one person that's really good at LinkedIn. There's one, and I don't, have you found anyone that's good at everything, or it's sort of, do you tend to pick freelancers that stick in their lane? Like this is my one thing that's really good. I'm really good at this part. I'm really good at this part. And they kind of bring them all together with that master strategy.
I mean, I am kind of one of those marketers that I would claim to be good at every platform. I think there's not, there's certain platforms that you have to be a niche on, I think. TikTok is one of them and Pinterest is one of them.
Okay.
Whereas Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, even Threads, like it's a little bit more, I think that marketers can be more than just one niche.
Mhm.
Um, given the industry, given how fast moving it is, I don't know many marketers that only focus on one platform and one platform only. It's
Okay.
not something I recommend to people either, especially given everything going on today, but even before then. So it's a loaded question, honestly, because I would love to say, yeah, it's much better. I mean, if you want to focus on just one channel and have one person as a niche, but I don't normally lean that way, and I'm a practitioner of multi-channel. So
Okay. Because that's one thing that I ran into. It's like, I call myself a CEO. I'm Chief Everything Officer, very small company, and trying to learn the Facebook and Instagram algorithms and trying to learn LinkedIn and trying to learn all this stuff and learn all these things. Sometimes I just focus on one thing. And, it's something that I think a lot of us get into where unless we have a full marketing team, it's like I can just, there's only so many hours in a day. I've been trying to get a 36-hour day going and it's just not working well. Have made a whole lot of strides on that. So we need to go in one direction. What
I
do you think?
totally get it. I totally get that. And, that's a common problem. I think that's where the strategy comes in, right? Because
Mhm.
yes, you should be focusing your efforts and your time and your resources on getting one platform super, super right. Um,
Mhm.
Reddit is another example as well. You just have to understand the ecosystem of how that platform works in order to actually utilize it. So it might not be worth it to open up an account on every single profile. But if your strategy says, look, YouTube is our most engaged audience. So we're gonna put our most focus into creating the best YouTube content that we can create. Brilliant. Focus on, like you said, knowing that channel inside out and creating the best content for that. But then, use your AI, you're chopping up your YouTube content and sprinkling it across channels. Places like Facebook, X, Threads, and Instagram, they are places that you can just trickle off. Now, if you're able to focus on each one, you're going to get better results, obviously. But if you're just able to trickle content out there, the basic fundamentals of each platform are enough to get. You see what I mean?
Exactly. Okay. Interesting. Now, we talked about ROIs, and you got some amazing ROIs with the companies that you've worked with. Again, since a lot of smaller businesses and there's a lot of small businesses like we are, Chief Everything Officer, where you got to get into this world. What are some things that should trigger in my mind as a small business owner? I need to do an audit, or I need to start looking at this stuff. Like, what are some indicators that you see if you had a client where you went up to and you had the ability to be very candid with them and say, okay, you need to do this now. Now is the time when you need to start on it. I think a lot of times we think about doing audits and we think about looking at social media well after we should look at it. I get this with online courses. I have people who will come in and say, "Hey, I've tried these like seven other things," and they're pulling me in way later than than if they pulled me in 2 months earlier, it'd be a lot easier. Hopefully, it makes some sense. But what are some things as a small business owner that you have seen that would indicate to me I need an audit on something, or there's something not working? There's a better way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, if there is a halt on growth or you see, oh, my impressions are going down, algorithms change, things are changed, we should always be keeping an eye on those numbers to say, oh, something's changed, maybe something's off or something in the back end has changed. But I mean, general rule of thumb, you should be doing your audits once a month, every quarter, and annually, because otherwise you're just throwing your money into the black
Yeah.
hole of the interwebs. So, sure, a red flag to know is seeing, I call it a red number of a red KPI of like a negative, unless it's your bounce rate. But ideally, you want to be doing those audits so you can just know you don't have to keep an eye out. You won't have to look for any red flags because you'll be having all your flags ready to go. That's
Mhm.
the idea, is to catch the wins so you can prevent future losses, I guess, really.
Mhm. And Kevin O'Leary said this years ago, and I just really love this. It's that if you don't know your numbers, you're dead to me, which I think is a really good philosophy to run your business with. If you don't even know your numbers. And as far as these KPIs are concerned, there's a lot of them, like impressions. There's all of these other things, and I think some of us who are not into marketing or who are just like trying to get to it, but while doing the thousand other things we have to do, don't know what to look for. So, what are the actual key performance indicators that we need to look for? And if something is going wrong, like we always think as followers, what are some indicators like those KPIs going down or KPIs going up or something's wrong with there? What are the key performance indicators we need to look at? And what are some of the warning signs we need to look at with those KPIs?
Yeah, I mean, overall, for the multi-channel aspect of things, revenue and conversion rate is going to be your most obvious ones. That's going to be the main driver of, is stuff working? Is it resonating? Is it converting? That also does indicate the tech aspect things as well. So if you have a great campaign, but the conversion rate does well, look at the tech aspect, look at the consumer journey, and make sure that's all in aligned. In terms of what metrics you want to look at for social, other than just followers, engagement is an obvious one. Saves, forwards, and likes and impressions. What you want to look at is the reach, like the impressions compared to the engagement rate ratio, right? Because that's what really gauges how much your message resonated enough for that user to take action. And the same
Mhm.
goes for emails. If you have a high open rate, brilliant. But if you have a high open rate with a low click-through rate, that means they opened the email, but it wasn't good enough for them to click through. So open rates, click-through rates are another one. I always keep an eye on bounce rates in general for landing pages, because that is a good indication of, is the tech working and are they finding what they expected to find when they land there?
Mhm.
So those are some good KPIs. And then if you're looking at collaborations, giveaways, and influencers and stuff like that, revenue and conversion rate is going to point a little bit more heavier on that, as well as how many followers did you gain from during that campaign while working with that person.
Okay. Because I think, again, that's one of the things we think about social. We throw a couple of things, see if it works. It may not work, and having something to be able to sit back and say, okay, well, here's this number. I'm a data guy. So here's this number. Here's what we need to look at. Here's what I need to call in a pro. I need to have somebody look at this for me. And I think that's one of the things that I wanted to convey to people and really help people with is what does that look like? What is it time to just kind of say something's wrong here? We need to pull it in. So good. Awesome. Thank you for the value. I really appreciate that a lot. So what is the number one thing? If you have a platform here where we're going to reach a bunch of people, what is one thing you would tell people, small business owners, about their social that they might be missing? Like a piece of wisdom you can drop on them.
I would say there's two things. And I would say the first thing is just make sure that all of your social media profiles are like your digital footprint, I'll say, because that includes everywhere you exist online if you have a profile. Make sure that it's branded and aligned. Like make sure your bios, if you have a tagline, make sure the tagline is the same. Make sure the logo and the branding. I think that's a common mistake that I see more often than not, that I'm like, this is so easy. Just make sure your digital footprint is aligned. And then secondly, I would say make sure that your content is visually fit, like it's fit to how that platform works. So don't put links in your Instagram captions, stuff like that, you know. Don't post an Instagram video on Facebook unless it looks visually appealing. Sometimes content on one platform just does not translate to the other. So that would be my second tip.
Well, I'm glad I got one of the two of those right because I don't put links in my Instagram captions, but I do post from Instagram to Facebook. At least I'm halfway there.
Well, that's okay. Like I said, sometimes it does work because I post the same things across channels too. But sometimes if you're posting something and it just doesn't translate, and you'll know it when you see it.
And I think I love to ask professionals that question of tell me something that you wish you could tell people, because it really sometimes gets us to open a conversation and see a blind spot. And I think that's one of once people see a blind spot, they're generally going to fix it, but most of the time they don't see that or they don't think about branding. I mean, in doing keynotes on my side, I always ask people, "Can I have your brand standards?" And half the people are like a logo. They don't really understand that there's a little bit more to this. I have an online course, and that's part of what I teach is here's how you pick out colors. Here's how you do this, just to show people how to do that. And so I think it's a good idea for just from what I've seen, people to do a brand standard. And what do you normally like in a brand standard is basically here is the basics. Here's my colors. Here's the fonts I'd like you to use. Here's the logo. There's often more to it, but just here's that consistency. What do you like to see in a brand standard for people? And talk to me a little bit about what you found to be the importance around it.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of what I like to see when people are considering their brand guidelines and all of that
Mhm.
stuff,
Yeah.
the objective of their business, the mission, I mean, that's the main important thing is does the branding align with the mission across all boards, as well as your objective. I think you have the mission of the company and the objective, and that's overarching and should apply to absolutely everything you do. But then also you have the objective of the platform and you have the objective of on a microscopic level of each post that goes out. Every single thing that you put out there has an objective of getting someone to do something. And then it has an upper objective, right? So that's really what I would add on that.
Okay. Cool. So we're getting towards the end, and I always have one question I want to ask, and that is, what is one book or podcast that has had a significant impact on your life that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, so for marketing, I would say The Filter Bubble is a book that I really love professionally and I constantly reference it. So if you're in marketing, I highly recommend checking that one out. It's still applicable in terms of the theories.
Okay.
Personally, The Power of Now is a book that I hold very closely to my heart.
Yeah.
And for podcasts, I would say Project Me Tiffany is a podcast I discovered over a year ago on TikTok, and I listened to it religiously. As an entrepreneur, as a freelancer, it sets my mind right for the day, and I just love it.
Awesome. And we'll have all of those in the show notes for you, plus some links to learn about Grace a little bit more. Cool.
Yes.
Yep. And you had an offer that you wanted to give. Yep. You
Yeah.
wanted I was just going to prompt that for you.
I just wanted to let people know that I'm offering free 15-minute social media marketing audits. So if you're interested in improving your strategy and getting at least 30% better ROI from your social media, get in touch and I can help you out there.
And again, you can get in touch in the show notes to learn a little bit more about Grace. And thank you for that, because that people, I don't think people understand exactly how important that is for a business. It sounds like it's only a 15-minute freebie giveaway, but it can do a lot of good. And just even from my own personal experience, it doesn't take a lot to do better on social media and to get that significant, it can help you a lot. And so thank you so much for that give. I really appreciate it. Cool.
Absolutely.
Well,
Thank
also
you.
thank you for being on the podcast today. Really appreciated hearing about it. I know marketing is a huge buzzword right now, and there's a lot of different opinions on it. I appreciate you giving kind of your very high level and your very high level opinion on it and the expertise and sharing that with our audience today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Good. Good. Thanks again for joining us on the Hustle and Grind podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Grace, check out the link in the description.